Good evening and welcome to this Community Issues Forum. I'm Harry Shovlin of the American Legion and I am chairman of this forum. First of all, the Community Issues Forum got its start about 3 years ago when Betty Cole of the Democratic Committee, Sally Eckfeldt from CBC, Ken Feltman of the Republican Committee, and I met at the Mad Fox. And I don't even drink beer. Each of us was a member of one or more civic groups. For example, I represent the American Legion, but I'm also a member of the CBC, my neighborhood association, and a whole variety of other stuff. Sponsoring a civic meeting can be difficult for organizations in these days of busy families and fewer volunteers who can do the little things needed for a successful meeting. This meeting tonight, Mr. Feltman, it was the prime mover in getting the program together, and he's always willing to do all kinds of the work that a staff would normally do, and we appreciate his efforts. And that's him over there. For those of you who don't know him, with the blue coat, let's give him a hand for that, okay? As we have listed here, preparing the agenda, that's Ken. Inviting the speakers, that's Ken. Arranging for publicity, that's Ken. Okay, securing a venue, well, that was me. Setting up and cleaning up the room, that's me. So, we explore whether we could work together and how we might combine forces to have enough volunteers to conduct top quality meetings. We wanted to determine whether we could share the burden so that no one civic group would have too much to do. So that was basically the primary reason for coming up with this idea of a forum. And of course, having this room for meetings has made life a whole lot easier for groups. I mean, VPAS has met here, the Garden Club has met here, and this has all taken place in the last probably 2 years, where the community is now seeing the Legion as a community resource, at least for our meeting spaces. And by the way, our American Legion is one of the few posts that is growing in the entire United States. Just to name a few groups that have participated with us in these forums: the University Women, Catholic War Vets, the Lions Club, Boy Scouts, Village Preservation and Improvement Society, Citizens for a Sustainable City, Cherrywood Homeowners Association, the League of Women Voters, and etc. Many of these groups also have their own community meetings, and that's another reason why we really formed, is because I was just talking to a League member, and I mentioned to her that the League puts on some really great programs, but only League members tend to show up for these programs. Well, if we can get the information out to CBC, to University Women, to the Catholic War Vets or whatever, we want to encourage people to go to these various events, even when they're not members of that particular group. Okay, we've had as many as 110 people at a forum here, so depending on the topic, and it's kind of difficult to get the word out in this 2.2 square miles, excuse me, 2.4. Now that we have not annexed 40 acres, right, Nick? Okay, and the forum does it with no board or officers, no staff, no dues, just volunteers. If you want to volunteer, just see any of us after the meeting. We'd love to have you help us. Now, before I introduce these candidates, let me thank them for their willingness to serve our community and for their willingness to answer your questions. Having been an officer in many groups, it's a time commitment. And when I saw that 9 people were running for the school board, I was really elated. I was even more elated in that I didn't know all of the people who were running, which meant they were newbies. And we have a great need for volunteers in the city of Falls Church. That's what makes Falls Church so special. It's the volunteers. And And so I feel wonderful that 9 people have stepped forward to seek those 3 seats on the school board. And then, again, multiple candidates for the school, for the city council. It's just a real good sign that people are really willing to make this, to continue to make this place a special city. Okay, some of the candidates who are not here tonight, they try to impose conditions on their participation because they're special. They would only take written questions. They wanted to be able to ask the other candidates questions, things like that. Some try to discourage us from having this event. They said it was too early. Does anybody know how many days it is to the election?
15 weeks.
105. 105 days to the election, November the 3rd, okay? All right, pick up your prize at the end of the, okay. Was that Terry? Terry's a Legion member, by the way, right here, okay? All right, so, and some said that they're not ready to start campaigning until later. One said Labor Day seemed to be about right. You know, good luck to him. They said they were going on vacation and so forth. So, but once again, everybody was given the opportunity. Well, if you want to be in public office, you ought to think enough of the voters to make yourself available early and often in the campaign. And after you are elected, well, you'll find out. Okay, was it Woody Allen who said 80% of success is showing up? One candidate who's not here objected to the involvement of representatives of political parties in conducting this meeting. Once again, I think we're all members of one political party or another. Well, anyway, well, I guess we won't see those candidates until our next candidates forum, which will be in October sometime, because Peg Willingham of the Democrats is slated to chair that particular meeting. We like to share the wealth, by the way, you know, as far as the organization is concerned. Now, before we begin, let me introduce someone that is on staff and is a city staff, and he's the station supervisor of the TV station. I just met him tonight myself, and that's Mike Palmrose. Please stand. Okay, there you go, right there. Okay, we're trying to, the committee that helps run the station is trying to revitalize its coverage, and Mike is going to be, once again, a major part of that revitalization of the TV station. And we're really encouraging all candidates to utilize what services that the TV station has. In fact, I believe all 6 people who are here tonight have already made statements for the to be taped. Okay. You'll see a lot of campaign coverage on the station this year, and you just need to tell people to tune in. It started yesterday when FCC TV began running videos of 3 candidates answering the question, "Why am I running?" So it's already started. The meeting will be telecast at 7:30 p.m. every day and 11:30 a.m. Monday through Friday. So you get a chance to see this program. Now, the candidates. We drew names out of a hat, and the candidates will speak in that order, the order in which they are seated, from my right, your left. First, we're going to have Phil Reidinger, who's running for the school board. You want to come up here, Phil?
So thank you all. Thank you, Harry, for inviting us. Thank you, Ken, and everyone else. It's great to be here. I'm going to speak, I think, relatively briefly. Harry, it turns out you and I both have something in common. I like Mad Fox, but I confess I like and I do drink the beer. So having watched all of the school board and city council meetings over the past few weeks, particularly about the RFP, we talked a little bit before it was mentioned before. There are a lot of newbies in the race. I'm kind of interested in asking, what is the definition of a newbie, sir? Because I'm both a newbie and not a newbie. I've never run for political office in Falls Church or really anywhere else. I haven't run for any office at all since I think I was a senior in high school. But I've lived in Falls Church City since 1998. And before that, just outside the school city limits. You know, I'm a Falls Church veteran, not like Mr. Long, but I've been here for a while, and I love Falls Church very much. I love the schools, I love the people. It's just a really great place to be. And I've never had a job before that let me do something like public service to this degree. I've run very large organizations. I've had a lot of experience that I think could be helpful. And so having gotten involved in some of the parents who were working on the technology initiative, I got more involved in working with the schools other than just being a volunteer, which I did regularly, and decided that this was something that I wanted to do and offer my services to volunteer for the city if the city wanted me. I can tell you a lot about myself, but I think we'll have lots of questions. I can give you resumes. I've had major management leadership positions in both the government. I've served over 15 years for the U.S. government, and I've worked for 2 major private sector companies. I've managed budgets in excess of $2 billion. And I've had, in my biggest job, which was with DHS, we had about 17,000 federal contract employees and over 2,000 federal employees. So I've seen running large organizations, and I can bring a lot of that to the table. The issues that I'm most concerned about, I talk about this in my video, but I'll do it quickly here, first off, it's really the teacher pay gap and other issues with teacher competitiveness. You know, as I said, I've managed large organizations, and organizations succeed or fail based on the people. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And for a school system, that means teachers. You've got to have great teachers, and I think we are fortunate. I personally have experience through my kids, and I have triplets that are going into 7th grade this year, and they've come the whole way through the Falls Church system. So I've seen the teachers all the way from Mount Daniel. They're great. And I want to keep them, and I want to get more of them, because we're going to lose some of them, and the school system's going to expand. And that means we've got to be competitive with places like Arlington, and we've also got to address any other issues that make teachers want to come or not come. It's not just about pay. It's about keeping our teachers happy and giving them the tools that they need to have to do the job. Second issue is technology. I believe in right-sizing technology. I've been in technology for most of my professional career. I believe it offers a lot of opportunities, but I think it can also be overused. I don't need to drill into that too much now, but I think there's a right-sizing approach, and I'd like to work more with the school system to make sure that the use of technology is optimally designed to make our students ready for the 21st century, but not have them watching a screen all day, which, by the way, I don't think anyone in the school system, teachers or administration, really wants to do. The third issue is planning for the future. Those of you who've seen my blog or what I'm doing on Facebook know I'm going to all the meetings and I'm reporting on the RFP, because this is really, it's a huge deal. What we're going to do with the George Mason MEH property in terms of commercial development and school development is going to affect the character, not just of the west end of the city, but the entire city for the next 50 years. It's a pivotal moment. We've got to decide what's the best, how can we best pay for our schools, how can we best have the community that we want. And my key concern there is that it be as transparent a process as possible, that we get everyone involved, that we make the right decision, not for just parents in the school system, or people who've lived in Falls Church for 50 years, or people who've just arrived, but that we try to maximize everybody's interest, recognizing that there's going to be some people who are not going to think that it's not the optimal choice. That's just the way politics and decisions work. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And I think transparency is the best way to get there. So thank you. Thank you for everyone involved. Thank you to my fellow candidates for being here. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Phil. Our next speaker is David Tarter, our current mayor. David?
Thank you very much. I unfortunately played a game of water polo, parent-kid water polo at Lee Grant Pool on Sunday, so my apologies, I'm recovering from that right now. But thank you all for I did not drown, so that's a big success for me. Thank you for allowing me to come before you tonight. It's been my pleasure and honor to serve the city on city council these past 4 years and mayor the past 2 years. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself. I know you may see me occasionally in the paper, but just to give you a little bit of my background, I am a Northern Virginia native. I was born and raised in Alexandria, so I've spent a lot of time in the immediate area. I've seen the area change in many ways better, and other ways, and other places not so good. And I've lived in Falls Church for 12 years here with my family. My day job, I'm a commercial real estate attorney. I work predominantly in Arlington. Have been involved in a lot of high-profile, I think, successful projects that I think offer a lot of instruction for a place like Falls Church. I was on the EDA, the Economic Development Authority, for 5 years prior to getting on City Council, which I chaired for 4 years. I was also former interim city attorney. So I think I have some pretty broad experience that I think is useful for our community. As far as issues go, one of my primary issues I've focused on in these past years and will continue to focus on, and hope it's of interest to you as well, is economic development. I think it's critical for our city to continue to grow our economy and redevelop our property in a sensible, smart way, to make our city more pedestrian friendly, more bike friendly, to make our downtown more inviting to customers, to residents, to businesses alike. To that end, we've done a lot of things the past year. There's a lot of things that I've been promoting. One is area plans. We're now in the middle of a series of 8 area plans, which are replaning our downtown commercial areas to make them more viable, more commercially successful, let the development community know what we intend and what we desire for the future. We've also just recently adopted a bike master plan, which allows for better bike access, and hopefully will ultimately get bike share in the city, which I think is a very exciting possibility. Mobility for all modes. There's another plan we've approved for pedestrian improvements and the like. As far as specific projects, I was involved in the BJ's project, which you may recall is originally going to be a CarMax, a giant car dealership, and through some creative thinking and some creative plans, we came up with a tax share program that ended up having the BJ's come here. We've also got 2 new grocery stores, the Harris Teeter and the Fresh Market, that have come to town. The Harris Teeter, by the way, when the developer originally showed up, that was going to be, they'd asked that we contribute the land for free to the project. Through, I think, some skilled negotiation through all of council, we ended up getting $4.2 million or thereabouts for the city, which was a lot of money for the city. We also recently, this past year, approved about $650,000 in downtown area improvements for our downtown. In other words, pedestrian crosswalks, bike, lighting improvements to try to bring people to our downtown. So that's one of the major things that I've focused on. I think we need to continue to focus on to improve our commercial corridors to make them as successful as our residential areas. I see my time is running up. I will just briefly give you 2 other issues I think that are important to me. One is schools. I have 3 kids in the schools, 2 kids at MEH, 1 at George Mason. I have a niece at George Mason, and I have a wife that works at Mount Daniel. I'm looking for someone for TJ, and I'll be all set. But they're very important. They have been, and they're a central part of my life. And lastly, I think the tax rate is important to me and to everyone, I think, in the city, that we've got to try to keep our taxes as reasonable as possible, and that's been a focus of what I've tried to do in these past couple of years. So thank you very much for your time and my time. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Okay, now we're going to get some gender equity here. Next speaker is Erin Gill, and she's vying for the school board. Erin?
Thank you, Harry. Thanks to Harry and Ken for organizing this. I really appreciate it, and everyone at FCC TV, who was great when we were doing our candidate videos. I was a little nervous about that, but I think it turned out okay. I'm going to read from a script, unlike everyone else. Good evening. My name is Erin Gill. I'm running for Falls Church City School Board. I'm running for school board because I believe we need a diversity of views on the school board, and because I'm passionate about education. Currently, there are no parents of young children on the school board, and only 1 other candidate here has children in elementary school. With Ms. Carney's resignation, there will only be 1 woman on the school board. My children will be in the school system for the next 16 years, and they will attend all 5 of our public schools. I have a vested interest in the success of our schools. My family moved to Falls Church City 3 years ago. We moved here for the schools, but we have stayed because of the people we've met and the close-knit community we have found here. I am an active and involved parent, a homeowner, and a taxpayer, and I've been following the issues closely for the past 3 years. I've met with many leaders in our school community in an effort to better understand the challenges our administration, teachers, and students are facing on the ground. I became interested in serving our community after reading a guest commentary in the news press about discrepancies in teacher pay and issues with teacher recruitment and retention. As a daughter and sister of teachers, I became concerned we may be prioritizing capital improvement projects and technology over our most valuable assets, our teachers. During the recent budget season, I spent many hours advocating for our schools and our teachers and successfully mobilized a large group of parents to attend meetings and submit public comments. I attended every city council meeting and town hall after that. After the budget passed, I started taking a deeper look at our schools. I continue to attend city council and school board meetings, despite having a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-year-old at home. I am investing my time and making the time to be involved. I was not always a stay-at-home mother. Leaving the workforce was a difficult decision, but it was the right course for our family. Staying at home has given me the opportunity to be more active in our city. 1 year ago, I founded the group Falls Church City Parents to provide better communication and foster a stronger sense of community among parents in Falls Church City. The group has grown from 2 members to over 180 members in 1 year. Falls Church City Parents has evolved and is now a key way for parents to stay informed on school and city issues, including tonight's forum. My ability to connect people and communicate clearly and transparently are just 2 attributes I feel would make me an excellent member of our school board. I'm also an attorney who practices at 2 major international law firms, and I have a background in finance and sophisticated financial instruments. I have extensive experience reading, interpreting, and drafting contracts, laws, and corporate documents. Skills will be very important as our many capital projects move forward. I have read the official statement of the bonds for Mount Daniel. I understand the issues involved there. As a product manager at Bloomberg, I helped launch their legal research product, which is now used in all major law firms. I was asked to take over a struggling, time-sensitive piece of the project that involved hundreds of lawyers around the world. I wrote a training manual, developed a process for completing the work, and brought the project to completion ahead of schedule and under budget, using my management skills, attention to detail, and innovative ideas. I welcome the opportunity to leverage the same level of enthusiasm, work ethic, and focus in serving our schools and our community. If elected, I will work tirelessly to push for more accountability, transparency, communication, oversight, and planning from our school board. Thank you for your time. I hope to have your vote in November.
Thank you, Erin. Okay, next we have Letty Hardy, and she is running for Aurora City Council. Letty?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Letty Hardy. I'm running for City Council. Like Harry was saying, I am one of the newbies to politics, but we are not newbies to City of Falls Church. I've actually lived here for 12 years now. We have deep roots and connections. We've been homeowners on both Lincoln and South Spring Street over the years, and my husband Lucas, who's actually in the audience tonight, has actually lived in Falls Church City all of his life and went to school all the way from Mount Daniel to George Mason. My mother-in-law was actually a teacher at Mount Daniel for many years, and they actually now are retired in the city and live in the same home they raised their kids in just a mile away from us. So I don't understand the perspective of retired and fixed-income neighbors and what it means to live in a high-cost area like this. My husband and I moved here as newly married young professionals, bought our first home here, and over time added 3 boys to our family. We love that they're growing up in the same community that their dad did and went to the same schools that their dad did too. And with school-age kids, and they'll be at TJ, Mount Daniel, and Jesse Thackeray, I've had the opportunity to be involved in both the schools and the community. I've been a room parent in the PTA for multiple years now. We do youth sports and swim team over the summer, and I've been active in the community. Last fall, I was part of that community effort rallying support for the Mount Daniel expansion and the bond referendum. And this past spring, I spoke up regularly at city council meetings in support of competitive teacher pay. Since then, I've been a regular at those city council meetings and sat in on various boards and committees that I am passionate about, and I've stayed on top of the George Mason and Mount Daniel developments. Professionally, I graduated from UVA, and I spent 11 years at Capital One, which is headquartered in nearby McLean, as a director of project management. I led large, complex, cross-functional teams and projects, and had wide experience across project management, product development, technology, P&L management. I was known to be hardworking and an excellent collaborator. More importantly, I'm a critical, independent thinker, which I believe is so important when it comes to local government and not accepting status quo. I'm running for City Council because I love the city. I love the schools, the city, and the people in the community that really makes this a special place. And I believe it's time to add a new voice to City Hall to better represent all those people out there. We've been here longer than most young families, so I've seen where we've come from, all the changes over time, and really the great opportunities we have ahead of us. I'm committed to building a vibrant, sustainable Falls Church through a number of ways. I won't go into detail here. Hopefully we'll have a robust discussion during Q&A. But the first of which is strategic, responsible development that really diversifies our tax bases, revitalizes those underperforming corridors in our city, and creates vibrant, true live, work, and play communities. The city's going to keep transforming in the next 10 years, So one way or another, the change is coming, and development will come. So I think it's up to us to help shape the plan and build the kind of city that attracts the kind of businesses that we want to live in. The second thing I believe in creating that vibrant community, is excellent schools. Besides public education just being the right thing to do for everybody, it just creates competitive advantage for us. I especially support competitive teacher pay. What I remember about my own education is not classrooms or the computers I use, but I remember my teachers. So it's really time that we recognize that teaching should be one of those careers where we pay top dollar to attract and retain top talent. We also need to make sure that our facilities have the capacity to handle rises in enrollment, so we keep class sizes small, which is another large part of what makes our school system so great, so that our kids are not just a number in the system. That said, while I do believe that we need to invest in our schools, I believe that we also need greater financial oversight and prudence over where and how we spend the money on both the school and city side, which leads me to my third point. I also believe in more inclusive, transparent government with greater fiscal prudence. There seems to be some disconnects over time that I've observed between what school board and city council do and what citizens are actually willing to pay for. We need more commercial revenue that I spoke about earlier, and we can't keep taxing our way to more services. So I think we could be doing a better job at reaching out and engaging the community regularly so City Hall is not just talking to itself. We need to make sure we're really prioritizing what the nice-to-haves are and make choices until some redevelopments are underway that generates more tax revenue. We can't do it all, and we need to be selective and choose the most important things. My last point is around investments in infrastructure. We are so much more than just the schools in this community, so we need to round out the core infrastructure that will improve quality of life for everybody and set us up well for the future. Things like parks, pedestrian needs, biking, public green space, parking are really important to me. So if you'd like to be in November, I will bring my experience and my passion for the city, listen to all points of views, ask the hard questions, keep an eye on the future, and most importantly, treat taxpayer dollars like my own. We have so much potential and great opportunities ahead of us. It's a really exciting time to be involved. Ensure that there's thoughtful planning and leadership. I look forward to meeting everyone tonight, hearing your questions, and hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Letty. Now we have incumbent City Council member Phil Duncan. Phil?
Thank you, Harry. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight on a nice summer night. I also want to thank my daughter, Meredith Duncan, who is taking pictures right now, but at some point is going to pass out some materials that I prepared that will spare you from hearing the long litany of things that I think you need to know if you might consider voting for me. Thank you, Meredith, for coming tonight. I'm sure you all are struck. I hadn't planned to say this, but since I'm speaking towards the end, I'm sure you're all struck any time that we all get together and talk about the things that really mean Falls Church to us, how much commonality of interests and priorities we share. I think sometimes we can forget that when we get, in the trenches fighting over specific issues and making those tough decisions about priorities. I think it's very important for us to have the opportunity, and I appreciate the opportunity to hear others who are running for office share their kind of high-altitude vision for the community. I try to arrange my thinking and actions on council around the three themes that I ran on 3 years ago. I've lived in the city for 30 years this year, but I was a latecomer to elective office. I only sought office for the first time in 2012. And community and civility and progress were the three ideas that I thought I wanted to try to represent and present. Community to me means two things. It means kind of the infrastructure of the community. You've heard the mayor talk about all the great things that we're doing in that area. It means parks. It means the things that you see and you can touch. And I think we're making great progress in a lot of those areas. We're making investments that are the kind of things that will future generations will benefit from. Community also means the way we treat each other and the kind of sense that this is a place where we aspire to have all generations live. Everyone from Lou Olam, who, when we had the Independence Day readings a couple of weeks ago, he was like a rock star. He was there at City Hall and everybody wanted their picture with Lou Olam, who is, 98 years old now? All the way to the millennials, like my daughter, who's one of the folks we don't have enough of in the town because we don't really have a lot of opportunities for millennials to affordably live and opportunities for them to work. I hope that we can create more of those opportunities, and of course for the younger folks, the very young children. My kids went all the way through the school system, sort of like Letty's story. I think my mother-in-law, Carol DeLong, is here. Her daughters, Linda, youngest, Allison, and Leslie, my wife, were in the Falls Church schools for decades. My children went all the way through K through 12 as well. So community means, the things that we build and the way we treat each other. Civility is another theme that I decided to run on and have tried to practice in office. Civility does not mean that we're all going to agree with each other and make nice. It sometimes means that we're going to have some real knockdown and drag out discussions. But we're going to do it with the sense that the other person, number one, is worth listening to. It's important to understand their perspective. And number two, that you're going to respect that point of view, even if you don't agree with it. When I said drag out, I guess maybe that sounded a little too violent. But we're not afraid of having differences. We applaud differences. We celebrate them, even when Ken Feltman holds the timer up and I have a difference over how long I've talked. But that's okay. And finally, progress. That circles back around a little bit to the building part of it. But progress to me means a lot of things that have been referred to here. It means fundamentally, I think, that the community is built around the concept that our main product is sending out into the world young people who are prepared to make it a better place. We do a lot of things in the city that, maybe at City Hall you don't even know about. We do a lot of good things for people who are underprivileged that don't get a lot of publicity. We do a lot of things in public safety that we don't crow about. And all those things are very important. But the most important thing that we do is try to create a community that has a sense that we are going to contribute to progress in the world. When it comes down to specific issues here, I've said that I'm proud to be known as a penny-pinching progressive, and that is what I am. I believe it's important for us to try to live within means that enable a wide span of folks to afford to make their homes here for many, many decades. And so community, civility, and progress are three things that I try to bring to my work on the council. I would ask your support in the November 3rd election. I look forward to talking with you over the next 105 days and tonight to hearing your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, now we have Jake Radcliffe, and he's running for the school board. Jake?
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I haven't addressed anyone in a courtroom for over a year and a half, and this is my first appearance on this campaign. I'm now a stay-at-home father. I have two children, a rising kindergartner and a rising second grader. I spent the better part of last year volunteering at Mount Daniel on almost a weekly basis, teaching math to my kids' classroom. I think I probably spent more time at Mount Daniel than anybody but the people who actually work there. And I'm running for school board because as a new stay-at-home dad, I actually have time to contribute to the community in a way that I think would be meaningful and impactful. I have a lot of experience. I was in New York. I was at major law firms and led litigation teams for over a decade on cases that were worth, in the aggregate, hundreds of millions of dollars. It's always a fun thing to add up all the cases and see how much was at stake in the end. But these teams were teams of, like we have on the school board and in our school administration, highly intelligent people who had their own sets of drive. And we were trying to convince people who were also highly intelligent to agree with us and get things done. And those dealing with that situation, a boardroom of everyone with Wharton MBAs, requires a certain set of skills that I think is really helpful in this kind of community when we have so many highly intelligent people in our community looking at everything that we do. Every time I meet another parent in Falls Church, I'm just astonished at the things that they've accomplished professionally. And they're just, my son's friend's dad or mom. And it turns out they have a doctorate in something extremely impressive from a university I'm sure I couldn't have gotten into. So when that's your audience, I think that you really have to be extremely careful about the way you communicate and the way that you lead. Communication is the main thing that I want, that I think I can help the school board with. And you know, I have a lot of faith in the school board, the people on it. I have a lot of faith in Dr. Jones. But I think everyone is aware that the school, unfortunately, had a little egg on its face with the Fairfax Planning Commission not approving the Mount Daniel plan. And I think that it was not because anyone didn't think about it or didn't try to do their best, but I think it's because they weren't fully informed. They must not have been fully informed about the possibility that it would just be shut down. And that is because what was sold to us was that we were setting this up so that when we voted for this bond, it was going to be a turnkey construction thing. We were going to start construction this summer, and it was going to be done in 2 years. And I think that all the people on the board and in the school administration who told us that stuff believed it. But I think that the people who were informing us perhaps, or somehow something got lost in there, and we didn't have that first-year associate anxiety that I still recall, where like, if we screw up this one little thing, it could cost the client a lot of money. This could fail. This could fall apart. Everybody needs to know exactly what's going on. I remember that anxiety. It still drove me when I was of counsel and running teams of junior associate who I instilled that anxiety into forcefully every single time. And I think that we need to have some of that on the school board, and I think I can bring it. And I think I can bring it in a civil way to follow Phil. I had a lot more I wanted to say, but I think we're all shooting for the same goals here. And I just think I'd like to take the next few months to try to convince you that I'm the person to get it done for you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, as an added treat, we have two more speakers. We have Justin Castile, who is the current school board chair, and he needs to come up here and say his few words. Justin?
Thank you, Harry. I was not on the original rotation because the plan had been we would have a school board meeting tonight. We were working late into the night last night with our colleagues on City Council on the George Mason Mount Daniel RFP. We were going to vote on that tonight. It's not quite across the finish line, and so I decided to crash the party here. So thank you, Harry. Thank you, Ken, for having this meeting. And I'd also like to thank all the candidates and everyone in the audience who came out on a perfectly good July evening to spend time hearing about this election. I would say one of the themes in this election and really for our city is capitalization. And I think we're seeing a recapitalization. I think we're seeing it here with a lot of the additional participation. And frankly, that's been a source of concern for me for a while. You never know how many people are watching remotely, but if the presence of people in the audience is any indication, sometimes it gave me pause. Are we losing the tradition of participation that has characterized Falls Church for 60 plus years? And I'm glad to see that I was wrong and that we're going to continue and go down that path. We moved here in 1994. My wife, Ruth Ann, and I have 4 kids, one of whom is in college. We've got 3 more trailing behind who are all in the schools in Falls Church. I cut my volunteer teeth on the Citizens Advisory Committee for Transportation with Phil many years ago. I'm not even sure Phil remembers those days. I barely do because we had babies we were trying to put to bed. I've been on the Board of Zoning Appeals, some advisory committees for the school board, and now on the school board for the past 3.5 years. Most people here are being asked why they want to get on to school board. A lot of people ask me why I want to stay on the school board because with things like last night's meeting till 12, the question is why do you do this? And you know, for me, I think there is a a value in what we do in the schools. And I think I've said the value of the schools and the value of the city are very difficult to separate. The schools can't exist without the city and vice versa. I think we do a great job here. One of the things that I think is amazing about Falls Church is, they say quantity has a quality all of its own, and I think the small size of our jurisdiction has, you can have meetings with the mayor, you can have meetings with the school board, you can meet with the superintendent. It's small enough that you can have a level of participation that you really can't see anywhere else. And I think the future of Falls Church is something we really have to tend to. It's not a given that we'll be here forever. And we need to make sure that the progress that we've seen over the last 6 decades is recapitalized and is continued and sustained. I have also, I've taught 3 years at law school, and I must say that is a sobering experience when you're on school board, because you realize teachers, A, have a very hard job, and B, it takes a lot of commitment and passion. And I humble myself by, I think about my career as a teacher and juxtapose that with the high quality of the instruction by teachers here. I appreciate what they come up against. I think we have a challenge. We have many challenges in this community. Again, there's recapitalization of facilities, and we're seeing that with the George Mason MEH process, which I think could, as some have said here, really lead to some great synergies. I think we have, again, the synergy with the schools and the city. We need to keep the two working well together. And I would just close by saying, Mr. Duncan has mentioned civility. I do think it's great that we have had this evening a very informed and reasoned exchange. And I think as we head into this campaign season, I look forward to continuing that tone of civility where you can express disagreement and alternative ideas in a way that doesn't necessarily result in ad hominem or other personal attacks. So thank you all for being here, and look forward to the questions. Thanks.
Okay, Justin was the last speaker who is speaking about city issues, and we're lucky enough to have an independent candidate who's running for the state Senate seat currently held by Dick Saslaw, and he happens to be a member of American Legion Post 130 also, and he has been around Falls Church. I didn't realize he basically has coached rec basketball teams down at the rec center for many, many years. I was so happy to meet him a few weeks ago, and I mentioned we were having this meeting tonight, and I said, well, why don't you come? And so here he is, Terry Modelan, running for Dick Saslaw's seat.
Bring on the youth brigade. Here we are. There we are. Thanks to Post 130 for hosting this forum. I'm proud to be here as a veteran, as a Legionnaire, as a member of Post 130, as a leader in my military association, 173rd Airborne Brigade. Falls Church has been my home area since 1975. Lived in the 4-3 and the 4-4 zip codes. My kids were in school at Haycock and St. James. I've coached basketball, as Harry said, for 28 years over here in the rec program. Politically, I'm an independent. I'm not an independent bomb thrower. I want government to work. I want government to be effective at addressing the problems that it needs to address while recognizing that government has a limited reach in what it can do effectively. What would people say about me that who know me? I think they'd say 4 things. Number one, I've made a lot of things that seemed impossible to happen, in fact, happen. Built a memorial at Fort Benning for our soldiers, our KIAs, $800,000 memorial. No one gave us a chance of doing that when we started. I think they would say I'm a bridge man. When I worked on the Hill as a Capitol Hill staff, I could talk to the Jesse Helms conservatives in the State Department. This was the Panama Canal Treaty days. We found a way forward. Energy and commitment, I think this is the 3rd item. Ask any of my basketball parents and any of the kids who have been on my teams for those 28 years what energy and commitment I bring. Ask my condo association, where I'm vice president up at Woodlake Towers. I'm willing to take on the hard issues. There's no point in postponing them. I like to say that my background is the streets and the suites. I was born in St. Louis, tough circumstances, family unwell for a while. Those days we had the welfare lines that you stood in to get the sugar and so on. My mom became a Head Start teacher for 25 years. Paid for all my education from the 8th grade on. Worked hard, won a scholarship to Georgetown. Also have a master's degree from AU in public administration. Gave me an opportunity to see a wider community. 4 years as an Army officer, including 20 months in Vietnam, combat infantry, platoon leader and company commander there. No greater responsibility for the lives of men will I ever have. 8 years on Capitol Hill also gave me that, again, the opportunity to know the legislative protocol, the procedures, the relationships you have to be successful in a legislative environment. And 25 years in youth and municipal crime prevention gave me an insight, a deep insight into the schools and the communities and all of the people that those communities are made up of and serve. And I can bring that also to my job. I know the community. What are your needs and my passions bringing to this job? Public safety. Let us not be afraid to ask and assert respect for the law, but understand that we will get that respect to the extent that people feel connected to the law. I want to live in a society where we are not worried about the deadly proliferation of guns and drugs on the street. Education is the future of our economy, but one size does not fit all. We need innovation. Employment as well. We cannot hide from the advance of technology. We need to embrace it and work with it. Taxation. We need to continue a reasonable level of taxation with our state government, and any expansions that we have in Medicaid, for example, need to be financed by closing tax loopholes, of which there are many in Virginia. Environment desperately needs to be protected with quick action now. And finally, and I will say this in every statement I make, the right to life is the most precious right of all, the ultimate in child protection, the moral standard, which is the signature of our society. What difference will it make if I'm elected as opposed to the incumbent? I would say first, it's NOPAC versus MOPAC. My contributions, up to $500 from individuals. The other candidate on the ballot has raised $600,000 in 2015 alone. $180,000 from other Democratic sources, $322,000 from political action committees, and $96,000 from individuals. And the list reads like Dominion, $25,000, Virginia Beer Wholesalers Association, $15,000, Virginia Trial Lawyers Association, $7,500. And the list goes on, and even the podiatrists have their foot in the door with the $500 contribution. So there's a difference. I represent you. I will represent you. Give me that opportunity. Second, you get an independent. I'm not changing the ideology of either party. Third, you'll get someone who will work his butt off for you. Anybody that knows me knows my level of commitment. And fourth, you get someone committed to respect life. So I ask for your involvement. The slogan of our party, the Independent Green Party, one of the slogans is more candidates, less apathy. Let's get involved, make our system better. Thank you.
You could just hear that coach in him, couldn't you? You know, it's just there. And I'm a veteran 27-year coach, so I know from whence I talk. Okay, before we have the question and answer period, I have a few more questions here that I want to ask. This is a test. Remember, I'm a retired educator, and so I have a little quiz here. But we'll just do orally. Can somebody tell me how many domiciles there are within the Falls Church city border? In other words, how many houses, townhouses, apartments, condos there are?
5,000? 5,562. We talked about it just a few minutes ago. So.
5,501, according to this afternoon, okay? Houses, there are 24,000 single houses. Now, you candidates listen, because as David Tarter can tell you, I think Dave hit all 2,400 homes during his last campaign, in some cases twice. So you have 2,400 single detached homes. You have 1,716 townhouses and apartments. You have 1,385 apartments. You know that Oakwood has 563 units? Okay, God, that's a lot. All right, can somebody tell me how many registered voters we have in the city of Falls Church?
9,500?
Nope.
No.
Shame on you. You guys are failing.
9,900. I saw your paper earlier.
Smart man, right? Okay, as of 11 o'clock this morning, 9,288. And that's from the mouth of the voter registrar. But just to let you know that basically active voters are 8,529 active voters. And by active voters, these are people who have voted within at least once in the last 2 federal elections. So basically there are 659 people on the list that may or may not even be in the city. So you have 8,529 people you need to talk to. And remember, you have 105 days to do it. Okay? And so these are just a few facts that I wanted to bring out here, because it's a lot of work running for office, and people expect you to knock on doors and to really burn up the leather. So just keep that in mind. All right, now it's my pleasure to introduce my neighbor. And that's Dennis Szymanski, who is going to be the moderator for the questions. But before he comes up here, anybody who does not feel comfortable in answering a particular question verbally can go see Eric Clinton in the red shirt back there, and they can write their question up, and therefore he would read it anonymously for you. Okay, but I've never known a Falls Churchian to be not very verbal in my history here. But if somebody really wants to have write it down, go see Eric. Okay, Dennis, take over.
Oh, always a tough act to follow. At the conclusion of the program, you'll all get to vote as to which you like best. Harry's civics attempt at civics, or Terry's stand-up line about the podiatrist. I can tell you who I'm voting for. We're going to take questions from the floor, and so here's how we're going to do this. If you'd like to direct the question to a single candidate, please do. If you'd like to direct the question to every candidate for an office, or everyone up here, then what we will do, candidates, is answer from my left, that would be this left, my military left, to my right. And then the subsequent question, we will then go from right, we don't have to worry about Justin, he's not paying attention anyway, to the left. Okay? So please, questions.
Speak into the microphone, Dennis.
I am. You didn't hear me? Nick.
Yes, sir. I'm going to direct it to Erin Gill, because she says she's read the entire
I have read the official statement, yes.
document for the bonds, and of course invite everybody else to contribute. Where do we stand, and how do we recover on the whole Mount Daniel thing?
I'm going to caveat this. I am not a bond attorney. I am not licensed in the state of Virginia. This is not legal advice. So I did read it because I wanted to see what we could use the bond proceeds for and how long we have to use them. There is a time limit on which you have to use the bond proceeds before the IRS gets involved. We also have a disclosure requirement under the bonds in Appendix C. And there's a list of items that constitute a disclosure event. I'm happy to stand up here. Sorry, there's a list of items that constitute a disclosure event. I'm not the city's attorney, but I looked through that, and it occurred to me that what happened last week at the meeting may be something we need to disclose publicly to the holders of our bonds. And I haven't seen a filing on the MSRB EMMA system yet, but we do have 10 business days after the occurrence of an event to make a filing. So I just, this is something I've been asking about and trying to get some information about that. I did reach out to members of council and the school board on that question, and I know they're working hard on that response. I don't have all the information, but that offering doc, that official statement is available publicly. Anyone can find it. It is on the MSRB's website and their EMMA system, and any subsequent filings are also available there if anyone wants to look at it. Hope that.
Want to respond to that, and how do we get this thing through now?
I just wanted to, is Mary Beth here? Yeah. Ms. Connolly and I on last Thursday talked with Mr. LeCondre, the city CFO, about this question, about the fact that, you know, we have borrowed money to undertake the Mount Daniel project. You know, I think the short of it is, as long as we are making progress to try to make the Mount Daniel thing happen the way that we've planned it out, you know, there's not going to be any alarm among those who have lent us the money. If time goes on and progress does not appear to be being made, then, you know, some kind of plan B needs to emerge. And I'm not here to tell you what plan B is, but right now, mid-September 17th is the date that we're sort of aiming at to go back to the Fairfax County Planning Commission. If that date happens and if some action occurs there, then this question will answer itself if we're given permission to go ahead. If we're not, again, there'll be a certain amount of time, as long as we're, you know, proceeding on a path that tries to provide school capacity for our children. If a whole year goes by, a whole fiscal year goes by, if we get to this time next year, June, and we've not managed to, you know, get a plan in place, then that does become an issue that it's a serious issue, I think, and we don't want to be in that place, but we do, I think, and this is just me here talking now, I'm not trying to bring Mary Beth into this part of it. We do need to have alternatives, and we need to explore them, and some of that exploring has to be done in closed session because it involves issues that affect the city's negotiating position. So, you know, things are going to be being done by the school board and the council, and the school board and the council together, in addition to, I hope, pursuing the Plan A.
Can I just make, sorry, one follow-up? You know, do you need to realize too that we can't just take that money and move it someplace else. Muni bond proceeds must be used for a very specific purpose. We can't take the money and use it to, unfortunately, we can't take that money and use it to add on a 5th grade at Mary Ellen Henderson. It doesn't work that way. It's not a bad idea, but we can't take that money. And I think that is a point of confusion for people. Sometimes they think that that money can be just used anywhere, and it can't. So just wanted to highlight that as well.
Justin.
So I know the issue of Mount Daniel is of interest, and you know, I'll just give a little background. And you know, there was a June 24th deferral at the Planning Commission, and that led to supplemental information being provided by the city to the Planning Commission to address some of the issues that arose during the hearing. We have also engaged legal counsel for the project, and were informed that the Planning Commission needed additional time to study the project and review our submission. And so accordingly, as of the time of the meeting last week, there was still time needed to complete the review, and accordingly we asked for time to allow the Planning Commission to do that additional review. Because we are in summer, there is no meeting in August, and so we are now slated to go with September 17th. We are continuing to work with Fairfax County and with the Planning Commission. And at this point, that's really all we can say about that. So, you know, I think that there's work to be done, and I think we will work through that, and my hope is that we will come to a satisfactory outcome.
So, Nick, I'll just talk briefly about this. Unlike Aaron, I have not read the bond. I'm not a bond attorney like you, so I'm not going to talk at all about the financial consequences of the bond and the bond issue and what goes from there. Clearly, you know, as Justin just said, Plan A has got to be to try to execute. You know, we've lost a year on Mount Daniel construction. It's not going to happen at least now until a year later. So we've got a little bit of time. Not that that's a good thing, but you know, there is some space to try to get the project done, and Plan A has got to be to get it done. Plan B, there's a little bit of time to develop options for the most part. You know, and I know Phil can't talk about it. He would need to talk about it in closed session. But you know, anybody can sit there and think about what are the things that you might do. You know, in terms of being able to make some sort of trade or get additional land or bring land into the county or move it or the city or out of the city. There's a lot of different options. I think There's only one option, though, that we have to take action on almost immediately if we're going to preserve it without delay. And that is if one of the options, and I have not been on the school board or in the discussions, if one of the Plan B options is that we're going to put additional elementary school students on the George Mason, Mary Ellen Henderson campus, then we've got to, if we want to be able to move without delay, change the RFP a tiny extent to add an alternate so that we get proposers to say, what would it mean to add 1 or 2 grades of elementary school education? Just so you have that option. So they're doing bids already. You know, if you're going to add 250 or 500 or 600 students, what would that look like? How would it do the building? That would give us the data so that we could better judge whether that's a reasonable option. So I think that ought to be in the RFP.
Just a brief comment. So speaking as not necessarily a candidate, but a concerned parent of a Mount Daniel student, I wanted to share kind of what I've heard in the community, that many folks are concerned, obviously, that this has not happened. They're disappointed. They feel that they were hoodwinked, that they were told one thing, that construction was going to start right after school was out. We saw trailers, teachers packed up, put a lot of effort into packing up the schools, and now it hasn't. So there's a lot of disappointment in the community. The other thing that I want to make sure the community is aware of is I believe we are still paying debt service on the bond. So that is costing us money every month that there is a delay, and that's not cheap. So I want to make sure people are aware of it. I'm glad to hear that we're doing everything we can to proceed with option A and not distract from option A, because I do think we need to move forward with that and do everything we can to make it happen. But be aware that we need to actually have contingency plans as well so that we don't continue to waste money.
Next question. Hal Morgan.
Actually, I have one question for the council candidates and one question for the school board candidates, and they're kind of intertwined. For the council candidates, I'd like their opinions or their understanding of how much say they really have in the school issues, the school board. My understanding is very little. And my question to the school board candidates is, a lot of you mentioned transparency, and I think that as a citizen, I think that's one of the things that's bothered us for the last couple of years is the total lack of transparency. I mean, basic questions go unanswered. Now I understand there's a new law in the state of Virginia that in terms of the budget, line item budget, is now going to be available to the citizens. But I want to know, as your member of school board, how are you going to accomplish bring about transparency so the citizens really understand what's going on? Because before Mount Daniel, we had, if you remember, the Jesse Thackeray School, the project was originally $50,000. Ended up costing $2 million. So there's a disconnect. That's my question.
Okay. Jake?
I think one of the things that I would like to encourage the board and the administration to do in terms of communicating clearly is to simply respect the intelligence of the community and the fact that we're able to see exactly what's going on. I'm looking forward to working with the school board, and I don't mean to, and I am critical of how things have been done on this point, but again, I want to take away any notion that I think anyone's motivated by any malice or desire to hoodwink someone, and I know that's not what you meant either. I just think that it's a difference in approach, and there's a difference in approach between saying mistakes were made and now we can't go forward with the Mount Daniel construction. I mean, the day after this hearing took place on June 24th, it was a Fairfax Planning Commission hearing, where all of the appointed members of the Planning Commission were pretty hostile to what we wanted to do because it's a much bigger school than they thought they wanted, and they're worried about traffic, among other things. And they were giving everyone a pretty hard time. And then we made the big submission through legal counsel, and they received it. And then we asked for more time because they needed more time to review. And then the website said the Fairfax Planning Commission has decided to adjourn this till September. Not that we asked. And not really any of the information that I just gave you. Nick's paper covered a lot of this, and so I think a lot of people were informed that way. But there's a difference in approach there. to make it seem like it's just a unilateral move of the Fairfax Planning Commission to delay this till September versus explaining exactly what went on and what they were upset about, is that those are very, very different things. And so, as a member of the board, I am going to encourage communication that is much clearer. I also think that there have been other instances on other issues where parents have felt that they have communicated things to administrators and communicated things to the board that were not acknowledged in later public appearances by officials. And it's very frustrating to them. There's specific issues relating to technology and other things where people have gotten very upset. And I think that we need to just take a much finer look at that, respect our community, respect the intelligence of the people who live here, and start speaking to them like they're our clients, like they're the people we serve.
When I'm in the middle of the budget fights with the school board, and we've had some doozies, I try to take comfort from the fact that many who have gone before me have had those same fights. People like Sally Eckfeld, who was the chair of the school board, others who served on the school board in years past tell me, you know what, there's always going to be a tension in this town between the resources that we have available and what we would like to expend on behalf of our kids, because we want to do absolutely all we can for our kids. And, you know, the structural reality is that the council has the taxing authority and the school board doesn't. It would be fascinating, I think, if the school board had taxing authority and went to the voters in the same way that the council does and, you know, argued for their tax rate to support their priorities. But I'm not advocating for that because, as I said earlier, we really are, I think, our prime product here is an educated citizenry that we want to send out into the world. So how, you know, it pains me when people who I know are very active in affairs of the city feel that they're not getting the information that they want from the school board. All I can say is, you know, the current council has got several people who are very familiar with the schools, have had kids go all the way through them, or are currently in them. We actually talk quite a lot. We just disagree on some things, and we chiefly disagree most often on, you know, how much we can give, and we're very close usually. It's like this last budget, it was, you know, $341,000. The previous budget, it was not that much more. I mean, as for what I try to do on council, I guess what I try to do is hear those concerns that you and others voice, and take them back to my colleagues on the school board and council, and encourage us to, you know, be as transparent as we can, be as much in dialogue as we can, to respect questions even when they come from people who maybe we don't agree with most of the time, and that through that process we end up with an outcome that, if it's not perfect or something that everybody's completely happy with, it's at least seen as a legitimate outcome that was arrived at through an open process.
So I believe your original question was for city council members, and how much say do city council members feel like they have on school issues? Is that right?
That is my question.
Okay, so I'll try to answer that question. So as Phil mentioned, the structural reality is city council can't influence school budget line items, and so I think that is the reality. That said, though, I do think that city council and school board need to work very closely together. School and city issues are very much intertwined, and so if I'm elected, I look forward to being able to do that. I don't like the discussion when it's always a schools versus taxes, because it pits neighbors against each other. And I think we're all one community here, and we need to have the discussion together. It's not just about trading off. Do I pay more taxes? Do I fund the schools? They're all so much intertwined. We all benefit from great schools, whether you have kids in the school system or not. We're all one community. So I think that it's really integral that city council and school board work together closely, regardless of line item budget, you know, discussions that city council may not have the power to influence.
Hi. So I'll address your question about transparency on the side of the school board. I share your concerns. And I think that the number of closed meetings that we have had recently has really eroded some of the trust that citizens have in what's going on behind the doors, closed doors. And I share those concerns. I was at the meeting last night. It went closed almost right away. And I know some of the council members really fought to keep that meeting open to the public. And we really appreciated that. On the flip side, it's easy for me to armchair quarterback from the sidelines and say, oh, it should all be open and they aren't being transparent enough. I don't have enough of the information about what is going on in there and why are they keeping the meeting closed. They're receiving legal advice. So some things you just cannot have open to the public. I do ask a lot of questions. I try to be very transparent. If you speak to me, I'll give you a straight answer. If you look at my Facebook page or my website, I am always advocating for more openness. I will tell you exactly what happened at the meeting last night. I'm a citizen though, so I can't give you too much more information about that. But I do believe in transparency. I believe in open government. And I believe in keeping as many of those meetings open as possible.
Thanks. I think your question as to the bottom line of the power of the city council has probably been answered, and I would agree with what's been said earlier. It's somewhat limited. It's really the power of the purse. In other words, do you approve a budget or not? There's the process issues, I think, that you just heard about. And as mayor, what I have tried to do over these past a year and a half or so ago is increase public engagement to the maximum extent possible with town halls and other ways that people can learn about what's going on and have input with it. But the bottom line is that the school board's a separate body. They have separate legal stature under state law. And so the city council's supervision, if you will, of the school board is very limited. And again, it really goes back to budget items. And that's something where city council members have to think for themselves, and I think we have. And that's why we have these disagreements as to the budget. And the past year we sort of had a split vote about whether to fully fund the request of the schools. But I think at the end of the day, we try very hard to work together. I have tried very hard to make sure that as much information is available as possible. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
So my favorite strategy on most things is just do something. And if it turns out to be wrong, change it. But you do something that actually makes a difference, and then see if you need to do more. In that regard, there's little, if any, difference between what Aaron said and what I would say. I mean, item one is fewer closed meetings. I've been to all the school board meetings, I think, since I announced my candidacy, and I think all of them have had a closed session. Now, I get that personnel issues need to be closed, but I think we need to have fewer closed meetings, and if they're closed, that they be strictly limited to the items that need to be discussed in closed session. The second thing is, it's a small school system, and so inherently some things are done on a shoestring. But I think more could be done to build tooling in that provides transparency just by making the data publicly available. And the school system publishes a lot, but it tends to be a lot of more ad hoc documents. For example, I'm very knowledgeable about things like internet safety. I'd like to see the reports on how the computers are being used in the school system, because I think that would help us all have an understanding about which applications are running, what sites people are going to. And it doesn't need to be personally identifiable at all, but it ought to be personally identifiable for parents with regard to their kids, so that they know what their kids are doing with their computers in school. And that kind of technology can help us there simply expose data to the public that will help the public and parents make better decisions. The last thing is, I'm going to repeat what Aaron said. I think it's incumbent upon members of the council and the school system, the school board, to communicate. Like Aaron, I've got a blog and a Facebook page. I attend all the meetings and I write a summary up the next day. Not just all the stuff that happens, but I try to say, here's what are the big things that happened, here's what I think is going on, here's what are my suggestions for going forward. And I think that kind of condensation and sort of substantive pointing out from people who are active, whether they're members of the school board or members of the public, is a very valuable thing to members of the community who don't have the time to go to a 5-hour meeting of which 3 hours is closed.
I'm applauding. I'm a teacher and I'm applauding.
Okay. Wasn't the question posed
To the candidates. Okay.
candidate? With respect to the closed sessions, I hate to break it to you, but we talk about stuff that we have to talk about in closed session, and we don't talk about anything else. We certify the same. The meeting that we were in last night was in closed session because our attorney said we needed to have a closed session. It appeared that we were going to discuss closed session items in open session initially, but I assure you that we act with integrity and we respect the process and the law. And any intimation to the contrary, I think, is offensive and also not based in any fact. So the fact that we had a 3-hour closed session yesterday was because we were working on a project that is worth potentially $100 million plus. There's an extremely complicated process associated with it, and we're trying to do it properly. And I would ask you all to understand and respect that. And when we certify that it was closed and it was done in accordance with the law, it was. Now, with respect to the city council and the school board on the budget, if you look at the charter, it sets out what the parameters of the budgetary process and the city's review are. And basically, it's up or down on the number. Having said that, as I've said before, no city, no schools, no schools, no city. We are chained to one another, and we have to get along. And I've spent probably as much time with members of council as I have with my family over the past few months on budget and other issues, because at the end of the day, that's how it has to be. We need to work together, and we will work together, and that's as far as it goes. So I don't know what else to say on the issue of transparency, but I assure you that there is not some shell game going on, and there are school boards in other jurisdictions where their entire meetings that are done in closed, and you could read about those in the New York Times. We are not such a body.
Excuse me, can I follow? My question, I never mentioned closed meetings. My question is about transparency, especially about the data that's made available and the fact that, you know, line item of the budget, so the citizens can really see where the money's being spent and where it's gone to.
Well, and you know, the issue with transparency, I'm not always sure what transparency means in this day and age. I think maybe data pollution or data proliferation is another issue. There's a lot of information out there. A lot of times people say, you haven't told me X, and it turns out the information is there. Some of it is the challenge of getting information to people. I think we operate in a transparent way. I think we operate in a way that makes a great deal of data available. If and to the extent we can do better, we do try to do so. You know, the budget process that we have been using is consistent with the new law's requirements for line item budgets. So you're not going to see a lot of changes in the budget. I think you can tell where the money is going. We are audited annually. You know, 85% of our expenditures are people. It's not the kind of thing where there's anything where you can't kind of figure out what's going on. So, you know, if there are questions that you have about things, we try to be extremely responsive, and we're happy to try to help citizens get the information that they need. So, you know, by all means, contact us with questions that you have, and we will bend over backwards to try to get you that information. But with respect to the closed meetings, I was responding to some of the things that were earlier raised.
Sally Eckfeld, you have a question?
No longer relevant.
Oh, okay. Yes, Lindy Hockenberry.
All right, all right. As a longtime teacher and as a longtime leader within the education community, I had the responsibility for negotiating for compensation benefits and a lot of other things for over 20 years, as did Harry and many of others. I hear a lot of talk about teacher equity and pay. That is wonderful. We dealt with all the pros and cons constantly of pay scales in Arlington, pay scales all over the place, and Fairfax. And then a lot of the situation with this year was people leaving to go to Arlington for more pay. As a person who really loves the art of teaching, I think that there are other things that are so important to educators working in a system. And I think some of them are definitely empowerment and teacher leadership, which we always strove to obtain. And I've seen a decline in that. and a decline in communication within the system. I'd like to know some opinions from the school board candidates, because it's something that's very, very important to me.
Justin, that would be you.
I'm sorry, Lindy, I was up getting something to have a bit of a dry mouth. So could you just?
I'm concerned about, there are other things in compensation and pay. And there's all kinds of things that are important for a teacher to feel like they are really doing the best job possible. It's not always pay. It's empowerment, it's teacher leadership, it's all the things that you are allowed to somewhat surround your world with things that you believe in and work as a community, as a school community, to really do the very best job for our children. And I feel that we always say we've got the very best teachers, and I think we do. I'm very familiar with, probably 75% of the teachers. But I feel like there's not been as much empowerment of teacher leadership.
Well, one of the things that we sent out a survey asking teachers what is important to them. How much is money a factor? How much are other things? And I think, providing autonomy and, things like the time to plan lessons, the time to, exchange in a collegial fashion information, educational opportunities, getting the national board certification. Those are, for example, with respect to national board certification, that's one thing that we've made a real priority because it means a lot to teachers. It is a lot. It signifies a great deal. And so, that's one of the things that we've really tried to make sure is preserved is those kinds of areas to grow. With respect to time for lesson planning and other things like that, that's something that we recognize and appreciate. With respect to the long term of autonomy and giving teachers the ability to basically exercise their professional judgment in the classroom, there are things like the standardized testing issues that are not, things that are imposed on us and things that we have to deal with. I think those have had a significant impact. I think Falls Church in general does a pretty good job of managing to deal with those realities and yet at the same time give teachers options. But, from my standpoint, I think professional development is a key issue. And I think, we listen to teachers. We want to have an exchange as to how we can empower them. And I think we're working on that. And I'm hopeful that, we can continue to broaden those possibilities.
And it's not all of professional development. It's
no.
The building. It's within the building, the climate and the climate that's within buildings.
Right.
So that people feel free to voice their concerns.
And I think we work hard to do that. I think we try to set up mechanisms so those concerns do bubble up. And I'm hopeful that those are working. If not, I'd like to hear about it.
So I'm mindful of the fact that, in a political campaign, that anytime you say something, it feels like a criticism of someone. And I'm not trying to do that. I'd actually like to go back and talk about what Justin said at the start. As specifically as Aaron said, we're not in closed sessions, just to sort of talk about the last topic for a second. We don't know what happens, and we can't criticize the decision that particular things be closed or open. I would just say that my general feeling is that it feels like there's a lot of closed session work. I'd like to see less of that, and I'd like to see things skewed towards being open when there's an argument they can be. I'd like to err on the side of openness. And I by no means intend to impugn the integrity of anyone on the school board or the city council. And I feel they do a great job and they do a lot of sacrifices. But there was, for example, an argument yesterday, I wasn't present for it, but for 20 minutes or so, whether to close the session for the discussion of the RFP. So there are places where you can go differently. Let me answer specifically your question. Sorry.
I was going to point you back.
I understand. Sorry, I didn't mean to do the politician thing. I haven't been a politician. I agree with you completely. You know, there needs to be an atmosphere of openness where people feel free to say things, where teachers feel empowered to take leadership positions, and parents are empowered to, you know, act on those decisions and work with teachers. You know, there are, and I don't know why, there have been places where there have been shortfalls. You know, I can only talk about the things that I know, right? And so, you know, one of the things I know, and Tony's going to get very annoyed with me for saying this, but, you know, one of them was the, you know, because this is a technology initiative, the 50% rule, right? I'm going to duck when the tomatoes come. But there was an initial statement that teachers were supposed to use 50%, or use technology in 50% of classroom activities. I forget what the exact language was. And, you know, Dr. Bird talked about this at a recent school board meeting, where he said the DLT, the digital learning team, quickly realized that wasn't appropriate, and it was going to result in technology being used where it wasn't right. But it took a long time for that word to get out. And, you know, there were teachers well into the year that felt like they had to use technology, and they were going to be rated on whether they were using technology, not how well they were teaching. And so I think that, you know, those kinds of things are going to happen, but we have to make absolutely sure that, you know, as a part of teacher retention, and I agree with you, it is a teacher retention question among other things, we trust our teachers. And, you know, we as parents, school board members, and school administrators have to convey that message all the time, because, you know, great educators give great education. And so let's keep and trust our great educators.
Well, as I mentioned, the reason I got involved in this in the first place is that I read Joel Block's guest commentary about how we're losing teachers due to compensation issues, but other issues as well. And, you know, I've worked in organizations where I was paid a lot of money, and I took a lower paying job because I felt I was more valued at that job. So at the end of the day, pay isn't everything. We can pay our teachers a lot of money, but if we don't value them, it doesn't matter. At some point, the work environment trumps the amount of money you're going to give somebody. I think that a good teacher can teach a student anywhere. I think a good teacher can teach a student with any materials. I don't think that we need to have the best technology and the best building to have the best education for our children. And not to say that I would love some beautiful new buildings, and I am a supporter of technology. But at the end of the day, if we don't have good teachers, we don't have anything. And I'm more concerned that we have the best teachers teaching our students, and that our teachers are excited to be here, and they want to be here, and they feel like we want them to be here, and we value them. And to me, that is the #1 priority. That answers your question.
Yeah, Lindy, I just want to speak to your same question about empowering the teachers, using the leadership sort of from the collective of the teachers to try to improve the schools. And what you see is a decline of communication in the system. I haven't been here long enough to witness a decline, but I was at Mount Daniel a lot, as I said earlier, all year. And I noticed a few things. I noticed that the sort of push generally to big data, which is actually traceable all the way back to No Child Left Behind and some other things which are now back in the political spotlight, has caused school systems to focus very heavily on quantifiable things, particularly with literacy and math and testing there. There are a lot of other things that our children learn in school, interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills, other ways that they need to grow, particularly at the elementary level. And I think that, you know, because the testing is imposed on us, and Justin's absolutely right about that, and it's a significant part of our budget is dependent on us complying with this state mandate that we can't simply just jettison. We do need to keep testing going. But I think when it comes to teachers and how they're evaluated, to the extent that teachers start to have anxiety about data being collected on them, that their evaluation is going to be not recognize who they are as a whole. I think that that's something that we should keep in mind. And again, I haven't been here long enough to know whether something has changed recently, but I know a lot of the teachers who teach kindergarten and first grade, and I know that they do a lot of things that have nothing to do with the numbers that come out on the test scores. So I think we, from the school board perspective, the other thing to know is that we're a school board and we are here to provide leadership and counsel and guidance to effectively Dr. Jones. And then Dr. Jones implements things throughout the school system. So if I am elected to the board, I am not going to be involved in teacher evaluations. That was not the board member's job, and it's not going to be. But we do have the ability to work with Dr. Jones and build the kind of school system we want to have for our kids. And that includes taking care of the teachers.
Ten more minutes. Any more questions from the floor?
Yes, sir.
Question for the city council folks. How would you rate how the Mason Road project is going so far, and give it a letter grade, since we're talking about teachers and education?
Okay,
I'd
so
like to hear what your thoughts are.
so starting with Phil, letter grade, Mason Row.
Well, I need an explanation. Just love
Okay, yeah,
just want to know a little bit more.
I'm glad you asked a question about economic development because it's very important to talk about these school issues. One thing, if you're on city council, that I try to focus a lot of attention on is generating the revenues to support the decisions that are made by the school board to educate our children in the best way. So that brings me to economic development. In my mind, the city is in a great position that I had only dreamed that it might be when I ran 3 years ago. Basically, when I ran 3 years ago, we were coming out of a time when not really a whole lot had happened. I mean, you know, staff was working, people were trying to recruit businesses, but there had not been a lot that had come up out of the ground. And that puts us in the position when a proposal is brought to us that I won't say requires us to accept it, because that's not true, but it doesn't, we don't have as much leverage if we're only dealing with like one project, because wow, that Harris Teeter, that would be great. We really need that Harris Teeter. That's what many people say. Or the Lincoln Building. Now though, to forward to your question, I think we are in a position where we have several fairly serious proposals that are being considered. The Mason Row is one. The project at the corner of Broad and Washington is the other. As a council member, I think that puts us all in a good position in negotiating with the developers to drive a good bargain, a better bargain, the best bargain that we possibly can for the city. So it's hard for me to give a grade to a project that, you know, has had a lot of iterations. We all know that. You know, we're supposed to get a new proposal coming our way fairly soon. And I've asked people, you know, just hold off and let's see what that proposal is. I will say that I think developers, there are certain developers who say, you know, we're going to bring you a grocery store and some apartments over it, and that's what we're going to do. And if you don't like that, then, you know, go pound sand. There are developers who say, you know, we've got an idea for a project and we can do a hotel. We might be able to do a theater if you're interested in that. We'd like to talk with the community about what the community would really like to see. Do you want a bigger open space? Do you want this, that, or the other? I think Mason Row is clearly one of the latter kind of projects. A lot of discussion with the developer. I think that's good. It can be a little frustrating, I understand, but without prejudging what council will decide, I guess I would give a good solid B to where we are generally with economic development. You know, we're almost to the point, really, where we can see that the revenue that we generate will meet our needs. I mean, you know, it'll never meet all our needs, but, you know, we were so close in the last couple of budget years that if we could get a couple, and it's not just about the money, it's about the kind of things that these developments bring to the community. They bring, you know, community-enhancing amenities. Let's all meet at Mad Fox. Let's go, you know, you get my point. So, economic development generally, and I think no small part of that is the leadership of the mayor. I mean, I do give Mayor Tarter a lot of credit for, he knows the business, and he knows how to deal with developers, and I hope people feel like we are driving a good bargain for the city and the projects that are coming down the pike.
Hi, Bill. So on Mason Row, I believe we are waiting for version 6 or version 7 of the plan. And my understanding of the large reason why, I think, is that there's just been so much community input. And so to the developers' credit, I actually give them a pretty solid grade in actually hearing out neighbors and citizens, because I do think that's such a critical part anytime you're trying to develop an area. So I actually give them maybe like a B+ in terms of actually hearing out citizens. In terms of the plan itself, at least the last version that I reviewed, I was pretty excited about parts of it. I was excited that earlier I mentioned kind of creating that really live, work, and play. And I think to date, Mason Row probably has the biggest amount of work and play in there. We clearly need some residential. I think it creates kind of that vibrant neighborhood you really need. But I've been excited to see that there's a lot of first floor ground retail, which is what you need in town to attract. And it's a great location. People are going to come, from Seven Corners, from Tyson's, and it's a type of exciting retail that makes people stop and want to spend their money here. So I'm excited about it from that perspective. I do worry about the traffic and the parking and the impacts to residents. And so anytime we're doing economic development, the two things I look for is to be strategic, to make sure that it fits there, not just that it can go there, but it should go there. And I think the EDA has done a good job of putting out the area plans, and I think Mason Row could fit to what we see in that corner. But it also needs to be responsible. We need to take care of those impacted neighbors. We need to think about transit, traffic, and all those secondary impacts and make sure it fits with the scale of what that neighborhood needs. But from a personal level, I'm excited about having that corner. It's so underutilized. I'd love something there in place of the Amigo Market or the General Dentist, and hopefully that'll spur development across the street, because I think there's a lot of opportunity across the street to do more infill as well. So I'd say B+ in terms of effort, because I do appreciate the fact that developers are actively talking to the community, which I believe is really important anytime you're developing.
So I'm not sure what grade I would give the developer. That's a tough thing to do, but I would just say in general, I have some frustrations. This project has taken, I think, too long to get where it is today. There's been too many iterations, too much time spent by staff, boards, commissions, the community going through these multiple versions of it. And I do appreciate the developer's willingness to work with people, but at some point you need to sort of get to the bottom line. I also appreciate the hard work that's been given by so many folks, so many boards and commissions that have spent so much time on it. Phil's on the Economic Development Committee, Subcommittee, Council that spent a lot of time on this as well. I have concerns about the project. I voted against it at the first reading that occurred, I think, several months ago in a prior version of it. I have concerns about the massing on Park, which is a residential street. I have concerns about taking a single-family residentially zoned lot and turning it into a 65-foot parking garage. I just don't think that's what the neighbors bargained for. So I think there's some good aspects of this project. I like the vibrancy of it. I like the fact that it is developing an underutilized spot that could be a spur for redevelopment in neighboring areas, but I think it's intruding in its present configuration too much into the neighborhood. I don't think the neighbors bargained for a structured parking garage 65 feet across the street from them. Even if you take a look, for example, at the back of the Hilton Garden Inn, you've got a garage that really protrudes into the neighborhood, and I think we need to be more concerned about making sure projects fit in mass scale use with the existing uses that are there. And that's the importance of comprehensive plan, which is a long-term plan and vision for your community and for particular areas of the city. Like I said, there are things that I do like about the city. I certainly appreciate the developer continuing to work with us. In the latest iteration that I've seen, which is not the most recent version that will be presented shortly, again, I had concerns about the massing, parking. I'd like to see the project utilize the bike trail more than it is right now. I don't like structured parking butting up into a neighborhood. I'd like to see more underground parking. I have concerns about the number of residential units. I think in the city it's always kind of a balance of trying to get a mix of uses. And in some ways you're fighting the tide right now because the office market is very weak. And so when you insist on non-residential uses, the other option are not really that strong right now. So it is a challenge. I recognize it's a challenge, but we still got to keep fighting the fight. And I think we're doing a good job in a lot of ways. The plans we put forth have provided a new vision to developers. And I think that's part of the reason why you see renewed interest in the city. And the more interest there is in the city, the more picky we can be about the kinds of uses we end up ultimately deciding on. I voted for some of the things that have been put forth in my tenure in office and against other things. So I'm for development, but for the kind of the right and smart development. And so I think we can do those things, and I think we're on track to really have some exciting things happen in the city. I'm not sure the project is ready right now, at least in the latest iteration for prime time, but hopefully it will be. Thank you.
We'll have one last question, Harry, or?
No.
Oh, okay, so there. Thus ends the formal part of the program. It's not a democracy, is it, Harry?
No. I learned from my wife. I want to thank all the candidates, but before we, the next part of the program, if you have a particular question for one of the candidates, you have until 9:30 to, you stand by the door, don't let them out of the door, and until they answer your question. But before we do that, we have a young gentleman here who's a rising senior at George Mason. We're talking about all kinds of school issues, and I would like for Eric to relate to you an experience he had 1 week after finishing his junior year. He was a Boys State candidate, and I would like for him to share his experience with you. This American Legion Post sent 11 boys to Boys State, and it's the most this post has ever sent to Boys State, and we deal with Falls Church High School as well as Jeb Stuart High School. So since we're talking about education issues, well, here's an example that you don't learn everything in the school. You know, you do learn a few things at home. You learn it at the Boy Scouts. You learn it in church. You learn it at Boys State, Girls State, Governor's School. There's all kinds of places where we learn information. And it's so sorry that the SOLs don't cover most of that, okay? Because teachers aren't involved in developing SOLs. That's the reason why. So here's Eric Clinton to tell us a little bit about his experience at Boys State. 6 days. Tom Clinton did not have to feed this child for 6 days, okay? And it didn't cost Tom nor Karen a penny to have him let him have a college experience. Here you go.
Well, first of all, I'm happy that it didn't cost them a penny because, I mean, I eat a lot. And luckily, it's buffet style at Boys State, which is nice. So, you know, it's a flat rate. But just a little background for the people that may not know me. I have been living here in the city my whole entire life. I've been in the school systems my whole entire life. My father, Tom, is back there. He's been part of it. Yes, clap, clap. He's been part of the city for a long time, and he's definitely shown the love for the city, and I really have a love for the city as well. And I'm proud to say that I'll be the 10th Clinton graduate through the systems here. But enough background about me. I think we're going to talk about Boys State. So Boys State is a program by the American Legion where they send you off from 6 days, and I think this year it was Saturday? Saturday to the following Sunday,
No,
right?
Yeah, Sunday to Saturday.
That's right. Sorry. It's confusing. But so the last few years we've done Radford University by Virginia Tech. And I think it's a very great program. We've got sponsored by some people. I did not personally make the 3 list that they require because there's 3 candidates that they choose to have a definite for going. I did not make that list, but graciously the Republican committee has supported me into coming into Boys State. So I want to thank Mr. Feltman for that. Just a quick side note, but yay. And but Boys State, all right. So pretty much just all boys. Of course, it wouldn't be Boys State if it wasn't all boys. So you get separated up into cities. This is not your city that you live in. It's more of based on like a general or somebody who's very prominent in like military history. So I got Dwight D. Eisenhower. I was part of Eisenhower City, and I met a lot of great guys. And it's just really great experience. You get matched up into 2 parties. There's the Federalist Party and the Nationalist Party. And I really found that ironic because it means the same thing. But so I think it's just great how there was like party conventions. I was actually a Federalist. So we had Federalist Party conventions and we had Nationalist Party conventions. We had various local government functions such as a mayor, a city council, commissioner of revenue, treasurer, sheriff, you know, your whole Virginia Commonwealth shebang. But yeah, it was just amazing seeing how many positions people took. I mean, we had the whole list of local government, and we had also state senators, we also had state delegates, and sometimes we had people who were going to be governor candidates or lieutenant governor candidates or attorney general candidates. So it's amazing how many positions there are for everybody to get involved in. It provides to you the sense that you can be anything you want. It doesn't matter if you're the big honcho who's the governor. You can be, you know, small, like as a city council, or part of like a revenue or treasurer, and I found that really exciting. But I actually lost my mayor election, which is sad for me. But it was all right. I wanted to be like Mr. Tardy here, but no go. But I did find great things. I actually became the editor of the newspaper at Boise State, and they call it The Statesman. Now, I actually got to interview Mr. Mark Herring, and that was a very interesting experience for me. And just asking him questions about what he thinks that people should know about the Attorney General and what can the Attorney General do for you. And just listening to him talk and listening to the politicians, it struck me on how well they speak and how well they voice their opinions, how well they connect with the people. And I think just that really impacted me personally, that I really want to follow in those steps and help impact people with my voice and my actions. I really, really did enjoy that. And also, I kept doing the editor job, and I got to talk to the governor. I had a few questions. And also I don't think I talked to the Lieutenant Governor. I think other people covered him. But I talked to the governor, and a lot of it was about SOL testing, about standardized testing. I think a lot of kids there really do not like SOL testing. So, yes, Governor McAuliffe was very, very, as I recall, very wanting to make it easier for us, yes, and making SOLs less. I think he said he took off 7. So that was actually the most talked about, was the SOLs. So, but it was just great hearing all of those elected officials just come. They were actually the people. We had everybody from the mayor of Radford to the governor. So it was just amazing seeing the whole process from local, state, and government. I really recommended it to anybody. Really, I do. It was a life-changing experience, not only for meeting connections and people socially, but to become a future leader.
And the Boise State program is one of the best programs that the American Legion runs. And like I said, we try to anybody who has an interest, we try to send them down at once again, no cost to the parents. And the big thing is you don't have to feed them for 6 days. You know, I really use that as a sales point. And by the way, every college application, including Mary Washington, has this question on it, and that's did you attend boys/girls state? What office were you elected to? So it also helps when they're filling out those applications. Okay. Do me a favor, if you're near if you have a specific question for one of the candidates, you can capture them after I dismiss you. But if you're near a chair, how about putting all the excess papers back on one of the tables so that the candidates can separate them? It costs so much money to get this stuff printed. We don't want.
It's fine. I can do it.
Okay. All right. Now see that? He learned that at Boise State. He'll take care of that. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, candidates, for being here.